Hi, everyone, and welcome to the virtual Meet the Grad Alumni and Industry Panel for Electrical and Computer Engineering, Computer Science, and Information Technology. My name is Joe Verasso, and I am a professor and program coordinator at Mohawk College. It is my pleasure to be your host and moderator for today's Computer Science and Information Technology panel discussion. Thank you to the Mohawk students and recent graduates joining us virtually today. We hope you enjoy hearing about the career journeys of our panelists and their thoughts on how job seekers can engage in the current market. Before we begin our discussion, I'd like to introduce our alumni panelists. Jen Armstrong graduated from the Computer Systems Technician Software Support Program and Software Development Program. She currently works as Junior Software Developer at Relic Health Technologies and is one of the founders of a software development club for students called the New Developers. Ryan Barrichello is a graduate of Mohawk College's Enterprise Business Program and Computer Systems Technology Web Applications Program. Since graduating, he has founded and co-founded software companies LinkSmart and Notero. Ryan is also a Mohawk College Alumni of Distinction Award recipient. Rodney Barnes is a graduate of Computer Systems Technician Software Support Program at Mohawk. He currently works as an intermediate developer at Relic Health Technologies. Rodney is also a co-founder of the student club, the New Developers. Gurpreet Singh Punj graduated from the Computer Systems Technology Software Development Program and is a software developer at TD Bank, where he works as an IT solutions developer in the automation team. A big thank you to our panelists for taking the time today to share your experiences with students. I look forward to hearing more about your career paths and lessons learned along the way. So I guess we can get started. Question number one. And this question is for Ryan to start. What has your career path been after graduating?
So my career path has been like 99% entrepreneurial. I did have a 6-month job after graduating, but otherwise I started LinkSmart in my last semester of college, which was a website design company. Over the years, it evolved to a software development company. And then I eventually founded Notero, which is my focus now, and that's a software as a service company.
Excellent. Thanks, Ryan. Gurpreet, did you want to weigh in on that? What has your career path been after graduating?
Sure. So usually one of the trends that we can see in our industry, especially for people who are doing full-time job, is that people want to change jobs or find more opportunities every 2 years. But in my case, because I'm working in a big corporation, I was able to find different teams and projects I could work with. And I've been working with TD from the past 3 years.
Excellent. Jen, did you want to weigh on that? Although I know you're a recent graduate.
Sure, yeah. I was hired right out of school after I completed an internship my third co-op term last summer with the same company that ended up taking me on. But my hopes going forward, at least for my career path, are just to get trained on as many things as humanly possible. I'd like to learn everything, every area of software development. That's my goal.
Great. Rodney, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still pretty early in my career as well. I kind of lucked out a little bit. The team at Relic is pretty small, so there's a lot of opportunity to get involved with a bunch of things. And I found myself just kind of jumping into areas that I was, really unfamiliar with, and taking on a lot of responsibility. And within about 6 months or so, they started considering me more intermediate, which is pretty nice. And from here on, I'm just, as Jen said, trying to learn as much as possible so that eventually I can become like a senior developer.
Wonderful. Thanks, panelists, for question 1, telling us about your career paths. Question 2 is another one that I know I hear employers mention all the time. And maybe we'll start with Gurpreet on this one. What are the soft skills in your profession that have helped you to succeed?
That's a really interesting and important question, especially in terms of interviews as well. I'm pretty sure more than 70% of the time you are going to hear this. One of the strong traits as a software developer and soft skills that we should have is willingness to learn anything new. So for example, Mohawk is training us on a bunch of technologies. It's DevWorks, it's training us on C#, Java, a little bit on mobile technologies, even machine learning. But the idea is that that is not the end of the world. As soon as you step up in the job field, you are open up to a bunch more technologies than you have ever think of. For example, even if you're doing hardcore development while you're in college or university, when I got into TD, the first thing I was asked is, do I know about Blue Prism or do I know about Pega? I didn't, and I was honest about it. But what they did tell me, and the manager was so nice, she said, hey, don't worry about it. We know you don't know about it. It was probably a test, but hey, start learning. And within 1 week, I had to learn that. Within 2 weeks, I had to finish my first POC. It's not about the timeline, it's about willingness to learn. That's one of the most important skills you should be having as a developer.
Awesome, thanks, Gurpreet. Jen, did you want to weigh in on that as well?
Sure, yeah. For me personally, I have a pretty strong performing and creative arts background. I went to a performing arts high school way back and I graduated in 2006 from high school. And one of the odd things that managed to pay off over the next few years and when I came back to college was that I was able to communicate effectively. I was able to leverage those skills for presentations, even just for socializing and getting to know people. Joe, you probably know from having me in your class that I'm not afraid to talk. and that's in an introverted profession that can kind of help a person stand out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of those skills probably helped you and Rodney with the new developers as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. MCing and the like, and advertising.
Awesome. So with that, maybe we'll segue over to Rodney to talk about some of the soft skills that have been valuable to you in your career.
Yeah, I like to echo what Jen said with communication. It's really important. As much as probably some of my favorite days are the ones where I'm just head down coding. I'm involved in a lot of meetings and a lot of communication just in general. I think that networking as well is probably one of the most important skills that you can have in terms of trying to find employment, get a job. If you're looking for a job, the first place I would turn to is my network. Other people who might be able to give me reference, or other people who might be working at other places, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Excellent. Ryan, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah. So a soft skill that I found very helpful is clear and humble communication. Whether like I was speaking or communicating with like a challenging client or like just in general like team management, falling back on clear and humble communication helps. It helps through challenging situations. Obviously, being clear is very important to convey your perspective, and staying humble helps the others see that. Also, in times where you're wrong, or when I'm wrong, being humble is also helpful because it makes things easier.
I really like that. As someone who worked as a developer for a long time in industry, I found that unfortunately many techies are not very humble, and they can sometimes come across in a very aggressive and know-it-all fashion, I suppose. So yeah, that's a great suggestion, I think. Question 3, have you pursued additional education and training throughout your career? Rodney, why don't we start with you on this one?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would call the stuff that I'm learning outside of work like formal education, but I do a lot of reading, as much reading as possible. At work, over the past year, we've been doing a mixture of refactoring and then refactoring towards a specific sort of type of architecture. So I've been reading a lot about that. I've got a physical textbook I use as reference. Anytime I run into something that like a new concept that I'm not aware of, I'll look it up, blog posts, that sort of thing. We were given licenses for certain training websites, Pluralsight, ViewMastery, to give us more training in the tools that we use at work. So yeah, I've just kind of probably for a lot of devs, I spend a lot of time just absorbing new things. So.
Excellent. Ryan, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I have. I have pursued additional learning. No formal education, but I've only really focused on it in the past few years, and I really wish that I'd taken a more continuous learning approach immediately after college. I'm sure it would have made a lot of things easier. I remember, so I came from a business background, and then I moved into tech. So then I've kind of got this I'm not fully on one side or the other. And so I used to be intimidated by the fast growing list of technologies that I'd never heard of. But now it excites me to hear about something new. And I know that I don't need to be an expert on every topic, but at least being aware of what's out there and where I should be just being part of the conversation or hearing about and then when I see something or hear about something that's interesting or important, then I can dive deeper into that and add that knowledge to my growth. And I think it's strategically critical, especially when I'm making decisions for a company's technology. And I think any developer can tell you that there's a 1x to 10x productivity that can be achieved at times by a very small margin of effort. So continuous learning is a no-brainer to me.
Gurpreet, did you want to add to that? I know, you're in the banking sector, and that may bring about its own specific set of educational requirements.
Definitely. So as you said, I am in a corporation. So we are lucky a little bit because if we are trying to pursue any kind of certification, it's usually paid by the corporation anyways. So we don't have to worry about that. That being said, I did pursue a couple certifications. I'm already certified developer in Blue Prism. That's the automation software a bank is using these days. And my next step is to get Azure technical certification for the architecture point of view. From my perspective, one of the biggest things that new graduates need to understand is when you join a job area or any company, the first question you should be asking yourself is, how are you different than all the other developers? Where do you weigh? And to put yourself above the others, you have to study extra and you have to get some certifications under your belt. Because when you are going to sit in at your year-end review or any kind of review with your manager, the first point that you would be making is, hey, I finished the certification and this is what I want to pursue in, and help me out. And that is how I have been promoted in the past in the banking sector. And that's one of the suggestions I got from my seniors, and I'm pursuing that.
Jen, any thoughts on the education for your career?
Yeah, so same as everyone else, I didn't pursue a formal education, but I think in order to stay competitive, it's important that you stay aware of things that are happening, especially in the area of software that you're most interested, or the place where you work, or where you're interested in going. For me, I feel like the best education you can get is to form like solid mentorships with the people that you work with, especially the folks who are at a point in their career that you'd like to hedge towards. I've been fortunate to have a lot of people around me who are smarter than me, who disagree with me, and we get to have lots of really great impassioned discussions. And they have opinions on technologies I've never even heard of. And it's great. I ask for help. I ask to help. I ask to sit in on meetings. I ask, for people to share diagrams and documentation with me and let me be a fly on the wall whenever possible to try and just kind of like unobtrusively just absorb information and discussions and hear what kinds of decisions are being made. Saying things like, I've never done this before, but I'll give it a shot, and having a supportive team to like let you kind of give yourself a crash course in something. And just like self-education in this industry is not too difficult. Like there's so many resources out there. You can find a YouTube series on literally every language and framework that exists, right? And some of them are really good. So you can keep going in any capacity that you want.
Thanks, Jen. And that's a great segue into our next question, which I think is perhaps the most interesting question of this discussion. So, and we'll start with you, Jen. What do you see as the coming trends in your sector that new graduates should know about?
Without throwing around too many buzzwords, the first thing that I think that was new to me that we didn't really touch on in school was cloud computing and serverless computing and PaaS and SaaS and stuff like that. So that was a big one for me to focus on. I've tried to touch base with a few people who I know a lot more than me about those subjects, like where do you even start? But the other thing that I noted here is just if you don't know what's up and coming, you can either go to like meetups or jump into communities, but also tech conferences are mostly digital now, and a lot of them are free. And so that's a really great place to find out where the really great bleeding edge stuff is happening. So that's my advice.
Thanks, Jen. Gurpreet, how about yourself? What trends are you seeing in your area?
I would like to mention 3 different trends that I see, especially from a banking perspective. Although maybe the new graduates would not really understand what they are, but as a developer, and Jen already mentioned, the best point for us is to go on YouTube and figure out what they are. This is going to help you out in long term. First is data science. Companies these days are really having huge amounts of data stored already, but they need to be able to understand how to make meaning out of those data. And data science is the way to do so. You need to understand that. Second is machine learning and artificial intelligence. I think probably every one of us know about that. It is kind of important, and that is the way to go for the future anyways. And from banking perspective, we tend to be a little bit on the older infrastructure side, improving a lot now. But still, if you're talking about bank, they're going to talk about 2002 technologies like old Java. So automation is the way to go. Banking have been trying to change a lot of manual heavy processes and automating that using specific SaaS softwares or using specific business flowchart diagrams. And that is really saving them a lot of money in the long run. And these are the 3 trends, which are really important, I feel like.
Thanks, Gurpreet. Rodney, what are you seeing in terms of trends in the sector?
Yeah, I think when Jen mentioned cloud computing, like that really like rung a bell for me. There's a lot of a lot more tooling kind of being built out there that breaks a lot of like traditional app infrastructure. So things like serverless cloud functions and stuff that you can use instead of deploying an application to a VM, for instance. I also see a trend where, I mean, depending, and I mean, maybe this might not be new, but depending on the size of your team and the size of the company that you're working for, you know, I've been finding myself doing a lot more DevOps work, for instance, you know, needing to know more about those cloud services, you know, how to deploy our application, you know, setting up CI/CD pipelines, that sort of thing. Things that, like, you know, at Mohawk, you know, I think they separate maybe more into like the networking stream. But maybe, you know, at a bigger company, you might be more focused, more specialized.
Excellent. Ryan, how about you? Any trends you're seeing?
Yeah, so and I come from, you know, significantly smaller companies, or significantly smaller companies. So I see things from a very horizontal perspective rather than if I was in a big company, I would be very specific. But DevOps in a cloud computing environment is like the thing, is like what we're constantly pushing towards. Serverless computing. So I mean, we're at our company, we're all AWS. So that would be Lambda and infrastructure as code. So CloudFormation. These technologies and like these practices, at least to me, seem like they're just like the you know, the way to go. I would definitely focus on that if I was a new grad. It's extremely cost effective for the company to adopt these, and it avoids a lot of the undifferentiated heavy lifting required to run your solutions. So you end up spending more time focusing on actually building better software that's more reliable and scalable and secure than you know, setting up infrastructure and just in managing that. And it does change the way that you would build your software. So that's why it's so important to like kind of use that as a starting point when building in this way, because it is going to change the way that you build or how you architect your code or your infrastructure. So, but once you adopt that, you know, you can move very fast and do it cost effectively. So.
Thanks, Ryan. Well, you know, a few of you now have mentioned the cloud, and so now I'm thinking cloud wars here. And so which cloud? Because as you know, AWS and Microsoft and Google and IBM to a lesser extent, they're all battling over this space. So if I were a younger student, which cloud should I be focusing on? Which one will rule the day? Should we start with Jen? Because we started with you.
I've only had work experience with Azure, so it's tough for me to say. I haven't learned the languages and terminologies of AWS, so I'm gonna have to go with Azure, but I don't want to fight anybody.
Gurpreet?
I'm going to just state a fact here. A lot of corporations are signing deals with Microsoft regarding cloud computing anyways, a lot more than Amazon. So my vote goes with Jen as well. It's Azure.
Interesting. Rodney?
I think currently at work, we're hedging our bets. We use both Azure and AWS right now. Because our stack is more Microsoft, though, I think we're trying to migrate over to Azure. I am seeing some startups use like Google Cloud Platform, but it definitely seems to be AWS or Azure at this point, I would say.
Now, which do you prefer using? You say you've got experience using both AWS and Azure. Which do you prefer?
Right now, Azure, because most of our stuff we're trying to migrate over there. It's where I've had the most experience. You know, it's not bad. It's pretty good.
Interesting. Ryan?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm totally biased towards AWS because that's everything that we do. And we moved from, you know, data center servers to everything AWS. So I'm like Kool-Aid, biggest glass of it. So I mean, AWS for me is I mean, they seem to have the most in terms of functionality, and they are so fast in how they move. I totally get that, like companies moving from like traditional infrastructure to cloud that are already on Microsoft, like I'm sure Azure is is probably the no-brainer in that space. Other than our remote work environments, we're all Linux-based servers, and all of our server pools and things like that are all Linux-based, and so that works well for us. I think that if you're a Microsoft person, then for sure Azure is probably the way to go. But I am probably the most biased person here in saying AWS. So
I feel kind of like it's like when companies try to get you to buy peanut butter, and it's like the first brand that you buy, you just stay loyal like all the way through.
Yeah, and there's a big change, there's a big cost to changing and managing very high level of knowledge in all of them, or even more than one. So I wish that Amazon would open up a second region in Canada for multi-region replication, and right now it's all in Montreal. But when that happens, then we won't have to necessarily use a second or third cloud platform for cross cloud backups and things like that. So.
Thanks, Ryan. The next question, we're going to start with Rodney. So Rodney, what resources should new graduates use to find work in the field, i.e. people and places to turn to? I know you touched on this already.
Yeah. I would like to sort of reiterate that I think having a strong network might be, your greatest point of leverage when looking for a job. So, it's a lot easier to get that interview when you've got somebody on the inside giving you a reference than filling out an application on a careers page. Developing that network, for me, the people I would consider sort of my strongest references are people I've worked with, and I think that's just, naturally sort of how it works. But I've also, been going there, in Hamilton, we've got a couple meetups that are pretty good. So Coder Camp Hamilton is one of them. That one, we've been trying to meet up, I think, monthly. COVID sort of disrupted that as well. And that's just happening virtually right now. And, when that was happening in person, it was great just to meet other people who are working in the field. I was still in school when I first started, and it can be really intimidating at first because you're like, oh man, I don't know anything. I have nothing to contribute, but I went there to learn as much as I could. There's also Hamont.js, which is a more front-end focused meetup, and I'm not sure if they're still doing anything during COVID. You'll see a lot of the same people going to each of the meetups. And Jen and I help run the New Developers, which is a Mohawk-based student club, which we hold events that try and put students in front of employers and help them build their network. So we've got an event coming up, I think, next week, a big social event, and we've got some pretty big plans coming up for the summer as well. So yeah, I would say do whatever you can to build your network because it's probably your strongest point, the best we can have when looking for a job.
Thanks, Rodney. Jen, did you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna second places like Coder Camp, any place that lets you kind of in a casual setting get in touch with industry without having to go too far outside of your comfort zone. That's something you can go and kind of passively absorb information, and then you elect to stick around and talk to people and build up that network. And I found that really helpful for just meeting people from other companies, honestly, because otherwise there's not a lot of opportunities to do that. If you are a person with an idea, you've got options like Surge at Mohawk or Innovation Factory. Those guys are great for people who have ideas who need to be paired with talent, or if you are talent, in software dev's case, you're the talent. They can often find you a project to work on. Sometimes the compensation varies, but it's up to you and what you want to invest in. The Software Hamilton website has job postings on it on the regular that are local, and usually people who know people who know you. So that's also a great place to look. Kevin Brown as a person, I think, generally a good link to the rest of the industry in town. Yeah, that covers all my practical list of sources for jobs.
Thanks, Jen. Gurpreet?
So Rodney and Jen already mentioned how important networking is. Unless you have been lucky enough to get an internship or co-op as a new graduate, your networking opportunities are quite low. So already Jen and Rodney are doing an amazing job of allowing some of the new grads to get into their boot camp and meet prospective employers. Apart from that, I'm going to mention a couple other points. Google, as a corporation, launched a new series. It's COVID related, but what they're trying to do is they're letting people do some certifications. It's entry level, which is going to help out new developers land a job. I think anyone who is new to this industry should be checking that out. It's important for you. And the second point is professors. So Karen Brown is obviously one of the biggest networking professor in Mohawk. We already know that, especially people who have graduated and are in contact with him. Software Hamilton is a website that's created by him himself, and all the jobs that you're going to see there is just his networks. And sometimes they're looking for senior software developers, but if you are able to get in touch with Kevin, he usually tries to help you out with landing other jobs as well. And final thing I wanted to mention is if you're liking a specific technology, for example, we mentioned Azure here, Blue Prism, Pega, any of these new technologies, these corporations also hold networking events. So they want to showcase their technology, they want to talk about that, and at the end of the day, when they're done with that, they let you network. Now, those guys might not be employers by themselves, but it's a platform for you to advertise or showcase what you are or who you are, and then maybe you can get on LinkedIn with them, and that's how you grow your network.
Ryan, did you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, well, 4 for 4 on these local groups, Software Hamilton, Silicon Halton, and a number of the ones I'd never even heard of. Those are all or similar groups are great places to start networking with people in the community that are like-minded individuals like you. Also, like developers working at companies might know about job placements before they're even available or posted. So the more you network, the more of those types of opportunities that you'll get as well. I personally have utilized Software Hamilton jobs to hire. It's actually like one of my preferred places because we hire locally. And like Kevin's awesome, and he's done a lot for the community over the years. So I've been very happy with it as an employer, and meeting different people at these events. Aside from even just like the job, aside from like using it for finding a job or finding new work, there's like so many other benefits from that, just from communicating from a mixture of like-minded individuals in the space, and use the pandemic as an opportunity to attend an increased number of virtual events you otherwise may never have gone to. Like there's no commute, so much easier to commit to, and these types of communities have been invaluable to me. So I would try to use it as to your advantage. So.
Thanks, panelists.
All right, so we will go ahead and wrap up. So first, I want to thank you, Joe, so much for moderating today's panel and for taking the time. And of course, a big thank you to our panelists today. We really appreciate you sharing your insights with graduating students and recent grads. I know that it's incredibly valuable to hear about your career journeys and some of the things you have found helpful along the way. So thank you for spending your evening with us and visiting the college in a virtual setting here tonight. And of course, thank you to the students for joining in on this panel session today. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you. See you.